In 2010, a magnitude 8.8 earthquake hit Chile. It released roughly 90 times more energy than the one that just flattened Venezuela's coast. It killed 525 people. Venezuela passed that number before sunrise. By this week, the count was over 2,500, and the UN was shipping 10,000 body bags. Same planet, same physics, wildly different math. The difference isn't the earthquake. It never is. The difference is a decision made decades ago in an office by someone who will never be named in any report. June 24th, 6:04 in the evening, a magnitude 7.2 earthquake strikes near San Felipe, west of Caracas. 39 seconds later, before anyone can react, a second one. Magnitude 7.5 near Umare, a double rupture, the strongest shaking Venezuela has recorded since 1900. On the coast, in La Guaira state, entire apartment blocks pancaked. Nearly 800 buildings came down. 189 of them collapsed completely. Satellite analysis by researchers at Oregon State University estimates over 58,000 buildings damaged or destroyed. In parts of southeastern Caracas, nearly every high-rise took heavy damage. The official toll, 1 week in, more than 2,590 dead, 2,500 injured, tens of thousands still missing. The U.S. Geological Survey's forecasting model says the final number could pass 10,000. The UN estimates $37 billion in damage and up to 6.8 million people affected. And here's the detail that stays with you. For the first 24 hours, much of the digging was done by neighbors, with their hands. There wasn't enough heavy machinery to go around. The president of the Venezuelan Society of Geologists listed the factors: the twin shocks, the soil, the resonance, and construction defects. The media coverage found its villains quickly: negligent builders, corrupt inspectors, a state in crisis. Somebody must pay. That's the story you've heard. Now here's the one you haven't. Chile, 2010, magnitude 8.8, 525 dead. Turkey, 2023, magnitude 7.8, more than 53,000. Haiti, 2010, magnitude 7.0, the weakest of them all, more than 200,000. Line them up and the pattern is almost insulting. The size of the earthquake barely matters. Seismologists have a saying, old as the discipline. Earthquakes don't kill people, buildings do, and buildings are not acts of God. They are decisions, stacked 40 stories high. So the real question isn't who cut corners in La Guaira. It's why corner cutting is the rational move in some systems and professional suicide in others. Walk through the incentives, one actor at a time. A developer pours concrete that will be judged maybe in 30 years. Skimping on steel, on cement ratios, on ground studies saves 10-20% of construction costs today. The defect this creates is invisible. You cannot see missing rebar inside a finished column. The buyer can't see it. Often the next owner of the construction firm can't see it. The market has no way to price it. Now, the inspector. On paper, he's the feedback loop, the person who catches the defect while it's still cheap to fix. In practice, in much of the world, he's underpaid, overloaded, and visits a site a handful of times. His signature is worth more than his salary. You don't need a cartoon villain. You need one tired man and one envelope. And the politician. Housing units delivered, that's a number that wins elections this cycle. Seismic enforcement is a cost that pays off in some future decade, statistically, on someone else's watch. So when enforcement blocks growth, enforcement loses. Turkey made this logic explicit and put a price tag on it. In 2018, the government offered a construction amnesty. Pay a fee and your code-violating building becomes legal. Millions of buildings were certified that way, raising billions for the Treasury. 5 years later, the 2023 earthquake ran a magnitude 7.8 test across the amnesty zone. The amnesty, it turned out, was a bet. The state betting citizens' lives that the earthquake would come later. Notice what's actually broken here. It's not morality, it's timing. Every force in this system pushes costs into a future that arrives all at once, decades later, at 6:04 on a Tuesday evening. The feedback loop that's supposed to correct bad construction, collapse, consequence, correction, fires once every 50 years. By then, the developer is retired, the firm is dissolved, the inspector's stamp is dust. A thermostat that reports the temperature once per generation isn't a thermostat, it's an obituary. So how do you fix a feedback loop that fires once in 50 years? 3 systems found 3 different answers. Chile's answer: move the consequence forward in time, onto a person. Chilean law makes the first seller of a building liable for structural defects for 10 years after completion. Not the shell company, not the dissolved firm, the owners and builders personally in court. When one of the few modern towers that did collapse in 2010, the Alto Rio in Concepcion, went down, prosecutors went after the people who built it. Every earthquake in Chile is, in effect, a nationwide audit with legal consequences. And after every major quake, the building code gets updated. The disaster feeds back into the design. The trade-off is real. Construction in Chile is slower and more expensive, and the system leans on courts that actually work. But an 8.8 killed 525 people. The math defends itself. Turkey's answer, and one town's answer, was almost embarrassingly simple. Erzin, a town of 40,000, sat close to the 2023 epicenter. Not one building collapsed. 0. Its mayors had spent years doing something unremarkable, refusing to tolerate illegal construction. No amnesty endorsements, no exceptions. Same national code as everyone else. Just actually applied, Erzin proves the code was never the problem. The trade-off: heroes don't scale. A system that depends on a stubborn mayor is a lottery. The lesson isn't elect better mayors, it's that enforcement, not regulation, is the product. Japan's answer: make the building stock itself, keep improving. After Kobe in 1995, 6,000 dead, most of them in buildings older than the 1981 code, Japan didn't just tighten rules for new construction. It launched a national program to find and retrofit the old buildings, with subsidies and public disclosure. When the far larger 2011 earthquake struck, the buildings mostly held. The deaths came from the tsunami, not from pancaked apartments. The trade-off: retrofitting is expensive, unglamorous, and permanent. A tax: the present pays the future, forever. 3 designs: personal liability that outlives the paperwork, enforcement as the actual product, and a building stock treated like software, patched, not just written once. None of them requires anyone to be a hero. That's rather the point. Back to La Guaira. The neighbors digging with their hands were not failed by an earthquake. Earthquakes don't kill people. They were failed by a series of quiet, rational decisions. Each one profitable, each one invisible, each one legal enough, compounding inside concrete for decades, waiting for 39 seconds of shaking to run the audit. Here's the uncomfortable part. Somewhere right now, in a city that hasn't shaken in 50 years, those same decisions are being poured into new foundations. The next toll is being written today. In permit offices and site inspections, nobody films. So the question this week isn't which builder goes to prison in Venezuela. It's simpler, and it applies everywhere. In your city, would anyone face consequences for the concrete before it falls? Because if the answer is no, the only thing standing between you and La Guaira is the calendar.